Hello, and welcome to Impact Champions. Impact Champions is the L&D podcast that provides practical advice on measuring impact. My name's David, I'm the CTO of xAPI, and today we're talking to Jason Haag. Jason's one of the co-founders of Veracity. Veracity is a learning record store with a focus on learning analytics. So naturally we had asked Jason about using xAPI to help measure impact. We also talked about the limitations of current authoring tools and how we can increase xAPI adoption in the future. And finally, we couldn't leave without asking Jason about AI and how that's changing all of that as well. And now, here's Jason Haag.
So today we're talking about one of our favorite topics, xAPI, and we've got a special guest with us from the United States, Jason Haag. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Pleasure.
David.
Thanks for coming online. So Jason has a deep history with xAPI, and even before that, going way back into the days of SCORM. Jason, would you mind just filling us in on your history with working with these technologies?
Yeah, my background spans over 20 years. I started off in the e-learning business, at first as a course programmer, developing SCORM courseware going back around 2000, something like that, creating courseware in Flash and even some authorware. xAPI was, of course, came way later, but I spent many years developing courseware for the U.S. Navy, different contractors, and then worked for an LMS vendor for a couple of years. I believe it was Think Learning Solutions. They were later acquired by SABA. I ended up working for them because they were the LMS vendor for the Navy. Many years later on, I went to go work for the ADL initiative. That's the government organization that created SCORM and xAPI, and got pretty deep into those standards. You know, I'd already been studying the SCORM books in my early days as a programmer. Often used that to help me fall asleep at night. Can get pretty deep and lengthy. But yeah, later on, when I started at ADL in 2009, that was when the effort to create a SCORM 2.0 was started, like a successor to xAPI. And really the strategy and goal of that effort was to, one, create something that could track more than just self-paced courses. As we know, SCORM was designed to support interoperability of courseware. You know, back in the 90s, ADL created SCORM as a way to make standardize courseware so people wouldn't lose their investment and all the content they created. And then xAPI was to keep that kind of interoperability in mind. You want to be able to keep your content if you move to another platform, but it was really more focused on data interoperability in that, if we create some learning content and we generate some data from it, that data can get out of the LMS. It can be shared with other applications, be mashed up with other data sources like HR data, and do some pretty neat things and really get into measuring learning effectiveness and proving business impact and tying that to KPIs and doing these more lofty things that we want to do as instructional designers and learning scientists and learning engineers that we couldn't do with SCORM.
I love the example of comparing it with HR data. It's one of those ones that's the correlation between learning and performance is something that is one of the silver bullets that we're trying to achieve with L&D, to be able to demonstrate how impactful the training is, right? So being able to correlate those two forms of data, which still seems, I don't know if you've seen examples yourself, but for us, there's still some challenges with being able to get access to that data.
That's right. Yeah. And we could get into some other deeper discussions around privacy, and that's becoming more and more important as a LRS vendor and someone that works with xAPI data on a regular basis. We often have to go through this whole formality of ensuring that the data, the privacy is going to be protected, even though the data is just learning experience data. It's just about someone's performance and so what someone did in the course. However, there is the ability, because of xAPI, to inject other types of data into that, such as more contextual information about the learner that could be private. that is definitely one of the challenges now with trying to mash up xAPI data with other data sources like HR data.
So you've gone through the journey, you've understood the technology inside and out, you actively use it, you run a company that is an LRS provider and data analytics provider. So you're living the whole journey of xAPI. One of the things that we've experienced as people using xAPI here in Australia is that there is a fairly low take up or even a low understanding of the use case of why you would use xAPI over something else. In the States, you're experiencing a similar kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. And I'm not running the company by myself, by the way. I've got 3 other partners with me.
Yeah.
There's been a great uptake of xAPI. I think in recent years, we've seen more of an uptake since COVID, and more folks were moving to online learning, and really seeing the need to track more than just course completions. They're getting out of LMSs. People are interacting with videos. They're going online now. I've seen some of our customers actually taking the data or the prompts and the dialogue that's happening with AI agents and turning that into xAPI data and doing some analytics over that. There's virtual reality, extended reality, mobile devices. There's just all types of ways people learn and train now that take place outside of an LMS and outside of a self-paced course.
Absolutely. We love the examples with video, with VR. We've seen those ourselves, and we're really loving the capability it provides for the learners to be able to access learning in all these different ways. But we sometimes encounter difficulty in getting people across to using xAPI. There's still a bit of people wanting to stick with their old ways, stick with their old LMS. Is that something you're experiencing as well?
Totally. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I want to say 2 years ago, I worked with Megan Torrance from Torrance Learning and Meg Fairchild. We authored a report for the Learning Guild, and it was looking at the current state of adopting not really xAPI, but learning analytics in general across different organizations. And, that was pretty telling, some of the results of that. A large percent of the respondents were still doing SCORM and still doing an LMS. And what were like some of the reasons for that? There was a multitude of them. Some people were, simply afraid of what the data may tell or reveal. A lot of it was, access to the resources. There's a little bit of a learning curve of implementing xAPI. It takes a little bit more of a design strategy up front, and really knowing how to tie like key performance business indicators to your reporting and analytics goals. That takes a lot of careful strategic planning in your xAPI data. And all too often, what we found just from the responses and just my general findings of interacting with customers on a daily basis is that they're often way too dependent on e-learning authoring tools that are limited in allowing them more flexibility in what their tools generate for xAPI data. Out of the box, a lot of it's not much better than what SCORM produced. Another barrier, we've seen a lot of LMSs. LMS is still kind of the center of the universe, and L&D, a lot of people still have to go to that as the single point of getting access to their content. And a lot of LMSs still just support SCORM.
Often we will work with other vendors who are trying to implement xAPI, and they just they have the challenges of not knowing how to structure that data and how what a statement should represent. I wonder if that is potentially the reason authoring tools have also struggled. They've always just done that surface level xAPI tracking, because it is harder to do. Do you have a viewpoint on that? Do we just need more resources?
I think it's a little bit of that. Yeah, you have to have an understanding of the data model and know where to put specific pieces of data. For example, the result of a learning outcome, you could typically store the score in a bucket called result.score. We've seen people make up places to put it in context result or other extensions and things that really don't make any sense because it's not the standard place to put it. So yeah, like knowing the data model is a little bit of the struggle. Maybe people are in positions where they don't have the authority to drive the decisions to really tie it to some kind of better reporting goals or like in measuring business impact. I think also the authoring tools themselves are a little bit limited. Some allow you to extend what data you can put into your xAPI statements, and some don't allow you to customize that at all. So it's probably a couple of different reasons in terms of the generating the data up front. You know, that's one piece of it, and then the other piece of it is delivering the content itself.
What do you think needs to happen? Authoring tools aren't producing great data. Unless you're building everything by hand, you can do it. But then you've got LMSs, which aren't capturing good xAPI. Like, how do we get through this barrier, this friction on both sides?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I know the answer. I do know that there are tools and others, vendors and solutions out there that allow you to, get around this. And some of it's an education thing. Not everybody is aware that these tools or LMSs may be limited until they've already, bought them or implemented them. So, there's a lot of solutions. I'm not gonna sit here and just push my company. We do have a solution. I know you guys do too. There's also tools that have been around for a long time, like Veracity software has not just SCORM Cloud, but Veracity Engine and all these other ways to augment what LMSs can produce. I think awareness is part of it. And the other thing is it is kind of hard to change the mindsets. I think a lot of people, like just the report I was mentioning earlier, they think that maybe SCORM is good enough. So maybe there's some education that has to go up to the decision makers and executive leadership to help them understand what they're going to get out of tying in learning outcomes and aligning that with measuring business impact, improving business impact of their learning solution.
It's also the element of sometimes things change when people have no choice but to change. So AI is coming in now and changing forever how people approach content development, so content delivery. So that skill and those techniques that people use that you discussed earlier in terms of instructional designers and learning scientists and all the people who care deeply about the understanding of learning and delivering learning and pedagogy and helping people learn, their roles potentially are being replaced or potentially pushed aside by the need for efficiencies. Have you got a standpoint on AI, how it's being used, and examples or seen how xAPI has a role to play in that as well?
Yeah, a little bit. I've got a couple of colleagues in the industry that have incorporated it into their authoring tools. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially in the front end. And you can definitely help with instructional design, strategy, learning objectives, creating some of the ideas for your content. I think Spark Learn's one. I know that you guys also have some content authoring capabilities in ClearXP. The caveat, I think, with any AI that we're all coming to realize that is that still have to check it. You have to make sure that the AI is generating stuff that's not far-fetched and is accurate. On the back-end side, on the analytics side, I played with using like ChatGPT and then importing xAPI data just to kind of compare, having an LRS product at our company. We want to see like, hey, what does this look like in the future? Is this going to eliminate the need for learning analytics platform or some of the capabilities we have? Is AI going to replace that? So naturally wanted to investigate that a little bit. And my, immediate findings is, hey, it's pretty powerful. It can produce very comparable graphs and dashboards to what our tool can produce, but you have to know the xAPI data model pretty well. You got to know where stuff is stored and how to prompt the AI to look for it there. If you're generating data about a bunch of people experiencing something in a VR world, you kind of have to know where the different objects are in the world and what you wanted to generate in your analytics. Same thing for any other piece of content. You kind of have to know your data set. And then kind of the other main caveat I had was that the size of the data set, I think it was limited when I last played around with it to like 500,000 statements. And a lot of the data sets we're seeing, some of our bigger customers are hundreds of millions, upwards of 1 billion statements a year. So, AI is not going to be able to handle that today. Maybe in the future it can, but today really can't.
So AI is one example, but where do you see it? Like, we're really hopeful that there is a shift in the mindset. Like, so learning designers for a start, or the principles of learning design, need to get your head around the fact that xAPI gives you so much more that you can achieve with your outcomes. So you're not limited back to your singular SCORM style course to put on the LMS. It's much broader than that. So that comes with time and people becoming aware and exploring new things. What else can we see or hope to see that would help the future of xAPI really kind of take off?
Well, xAPI it was designed to support learning analytics and performance analytics and tracking real world performance. So I think where the future will go will depend on who's adopting it in terms of authoring tools and more innovative approaches to creating the content. As David was saying, some of the better ways to get better xAPI data is doing something custom and building it yourself. But that's kind of difficult, and that's kind of hard to expect, especially in a world where we're wanting to rapidly produce content. They want to just focus on the learning design and the learning experience. And so any kind of future tools that make that easier, I think is going to make xAPI adoption a little bit better. And all it takes is maybe a couple of vendors to start getting everyone to move over to what they're doing, and then maybe all the competition will follow suit.
When you're spreading the message and you're going and speaking at a conference, for example, so I don't know if you've gone to DevLearn or one of those ones over in the States. What generally is your message when you go up there and you deliver your message on xAPI when you're presenting?
I usually do DevLearn every year. I missed it this year for some personal reasons. I couldn't make it over there, unfortunately. In the last conference or presentation I did there was on using xAPI with AI, because that seems to kind of be, to just follow up on your previous question, that kind of seems to be the future, but it really is going to depend on how the quality of the data. And that's maybe another caveat. It's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. You're going to get some really good results in quality analytics if you're using AI with it, if the quality of the data is good. Another big focus I've been really on the past several years is measurement and evaluation, and how that fits into the whole instructional design process, the whole ADDIE model. Often the E part of the ADDIE model is forgotten. People just design their content and they put it out in LMS, and they're just, okay, we'll get some completions and whatever.
Yeah.
But if you can really tie that to a broader business impact, like this podcast is called, I think you're going to get a whole lot more out of xAPI, and you start to map out your KPIs and how they're going to make some kind of behavior change in your learners, and how that's going to help affect the bottom line of your business operations. How can you design content, learning content, or training, or even simulations to impact people's performance on the job and how they perform? I think that's going to be where xAPI has the real value, and that's why it was created in the first place. So that's kind of always been my message when I'm speaking, is really thinking really deeply about that when you're creating your content up front, and not just another page turner. So you're going to get a lot more out of xAPI if you think of it in that vein, instead of just a replacement for SCORM.
Absolutely. We couldn't said it any better ourselves. Completely agree with that. So Jason, thank you so much for your time. It was such a great, insightful discussion. Look forward to being able to potentially discuss some more xAPI with you at a later point.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite, and I look forward to staying in touch with you all.
Absolutely. And thank everybody for joining us on Impact Champions. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.